Hello, my name is Neil George. I am live at the Money Show in Dallas, Texas. Joining me is Chris Gaffney. Chris is president of TIAA Bank, which is part of the large-scale, well-respected TIAA family of companies. Chris, thank you for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Drew.
Now, Chris, I've known you for a number of years. You've developed a great deal of expertise in the foreign investing front for U.S. investors. You were one of the first people to basically bring non-dollar deposits for American individual investors, right. International bonds, brokerage options to investors. So again, that's really been very empowering for people. Now that you're part of TIAA and that larger scale of family, you are now bringing some additional products through the CD world that gives individual investors access to certain baskets of currencies and certain opportunities with very limited risk. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Sure. It's called the Market Safe CD, and it's really been a popular product, probably the most popular product that we offer here in the past few years, mainly because it's a principal protected CD, US dollar CD that's principal protected. And the return is going to be tied to an asset class. We've done them off of precious metals, commodities, foreign currencies. The current one that we're pretty excited to offer right now is called the Global Growth CD, and it's tied to 5 different emerging market currencies. And the Russian ruble, Mexican peso, Chinese yuan, Indian rupee, and come on, Chris, what's the 5th one?
Indonesian rupiah,
Indian rupee, Russian ruble, Mexican peso, Chinese yuan, Brazilian real.
Brazilian real. So we have some of the
Sorry about that.
We have some of the big growth stories that are occurring.
It's really all the emerging markets, and the reason we put those emerging markets into this CD is because right now, of course, they've been beat up pretty bad, and so we think they're a value right now. We think that they've been beat down and that there's a good opportunity for perhaps a large upside. Now, it's a volatile set of currencies, so the market safe factor protects the principal. So if there's any downside,
so the Brazilian real basically tanks. You still are going to get your money back at the end of the season.
It's principal protected, so yes. And on the upside, there's a 10-time leverage factor, which means we're going to take the average of those 5 currencies over the 4 years and multiply that average by 10 in order to create the upside payment on the CD.
So out of the basket of currencies, you have 5. So the Russian ruble performs well. With obviously the oil and gas market in their favor. Brazilian real, we're getting some positive election discussions right now. It's getting a little bit of a boost along with its local market.
Right.
The Indian rupee, we're seeing some progress with the Modi government. Some hopefulness there. And then you look at
China,
the Chinese renminbi, yuan. Again, the ongoing growth story of the world. Some challenges with the dealings with the U.S. But the key factor in the way you've structured this is that any one of them has a problem, you're fine. If you get some of them having some progress, which is
that's exactly,
you're going to get 10 times that participation.
And that's the key is that you're either going to get a very large upside or your principal back. So the worst case scenario is you get your original invested principal back.
So let's sort of compare and contrast with, let's say, an exchange-traded fund, which many individual investors, they might look at some of the opportunities in these foreign markets and say, all right, I'm going to buy an ETF that is in each one of these markets. So that market, any one of those markets has a problem, the ETF is going to lose value, and you have a loss.
Exactly, and there are some leveraged ETFs also, but
that's the key. Will accelerate the loss.
Yes, and the key is the principal protection. So downside risk is 0, and that's really what makes this product very popular.
And of course, the other part of the equation is, TIAA is a megalith of financial advisory, very very strong in the pension programs, for a lot of educational institutions and nonprofits. So it has a lot of credibility. But you do have the FDIC behind this product.
FDIC insured, and you have the strength of TIAA behind it. But ultimately, you have FDIC insurance up to the limits of the FDIC insurance. 4-year product. So after 4 years. We're either going to pay you a large upside based on 10 times leverage, or you're going to get your principal back.
Now, one of the other market segments that I know you've had a long track record with and all of history with has been the precious metals markets.
Yes.
Now, gold and silver have been somewhat lackluster, unfortunately, with the current environment. Some might cite, the bump up in short-term interest rates in the U.S. makes the cost of carry of the metals a little more expensive.
Good point.
And then, secondly, you're looking at opportunity cost for some yield in short-term dollar instruments. But, however, are you seeing any sort of turn in these markets, or are these just a good value right now?
I think it is a good value, but in my opinion, we're going to be stuck in this range. We've seen them range trade here for the past few months, and I think both gold and silver are going to be stuck in a range for a while. But the key is we're starting to see some signs of inflation, and if we get some inflation back into the markets, that could propel more investors to invest into those precious metals. So
the personal consumption expenditure index, the PCE, we touched over the 2% mark. We're back under the 2% level, very, very small margin. So core inflation, obviously has drifted higher,
right,
but it's really not reared its head. The Fed and the Open Market Committee has said they're comfortable seeing the PCE head in the mid-2s.
To overshoot even,
and overshoot, and they're content to let that occur.
Right.
And some of the forecasters are actually seeing that in some of their modeling. Right. You're arguing that would be positive for the metal sector? It
would be, because typically a lot of investors treat precious metals as a hedge against inflation. So, we see more retail investors move into the precious metals when we start to see inflation.
So right now things are cheap, and so the smart individual investor might very well be looking to be in now before you get all the news.
That's exactly, and the key is diversification. And the key is to put 5% to 10% of your portfolio into those precious metals as a diversification tool, as a liquidity hedge, as an inflation hedge. It's not really about necessarily looking for that big move up. It's more of a hedge. It's one of those investments that just give you a core basis. And
do you offer a market safe CD in a gold and silver market?
We have in the past, and we plan to next year. If you keep up to date on our website, we always have new offerings. Next year we have them about every other month. We have a new offering.
And meanwhile, you do offer the ability for individual investors to buy gold and silver.
Gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. Palladium's been the big story lately, but yeah.
I guess with a lot of the commercial applications as well.
And
so how are they buying? Are these bullion, or are they actually?
We can do either bullion. We can do unallocated accounts. The most popular account we have for us is in the unallocated account, which is there's no storage fees. We base the price off of the fixing, the London fixing. So that fixing price, we add 75 basis points, so it's 0.75% onto that fixing price, and that's the cost of purchasing the metal and selling the metal, and we don't charge anything while you hold it. So it's a great long-term play.
So it's a very efficient way if you're going to want to take positions in some of the metals as part of the diversification.
Yes.
Well, Chris, I appreciate your time, and I wish you luck with the Market Safe CD product, and again with your continuing ventures with TIAA.
Appreciate it.
So I'm Neil George. Chris Gaffney is joining me from TIAA Bank. We are live at the Money Show in Dallas, Texas, and on Facebook. Thank you for watching.